Hi, this is Michael McPadden from the Tango API team. Thanks for joining me to learn more about Tango's mobile procurement API and our API platform. In this video, I'll be telling you about API error responses. Typically, when you make an API request, you'll receive back a successful response with an HTTP status code of 200. However, we all know that things occasionally don't go as planned, and sometimes an error can occur. Fortunately, when this happens, the API returns an error response that contains valuable information to help you pinpoint the issue and get you back on track quickly. In this video, I'll describe two things: the info that is returned in the error response and an HTTP status codes that this API supports. I'll show you an example of an error being returned from the API via our developer portal. But first, let's talk about what specifically is returned in an error response. An API error response includes four valuable pieces of information: an error code, an ID, a message, and a status. The error code is generated from the backend system and is passed along in the response. It can be useful when troubleshooting an error with the Tango support team, since it provides a cross-reference back to the source system that can be used to locate relevant entries in the server logs. The ID is a unique identifier for this specific instance of the error. It is also very useful in locating the error information within the log files. The message property returns a human-readable description of what actually went wrong. A caller of the API can display this back to their end user. Lastly, the status returns an HTTP status code. Generated by the server, these codes indicate why the server was unable to fulfill the request. Because they come from a standardized list defined in the HTTP protocol, they are easily understood by callers of the API. A 200 response indicates that the request was successful. But if there is an error and the API cannot fulfill the request, one of the following status codes would be returned. A 400 indicates a bad request. This occurs when an invalid or incomplete request is made. For example, a required parameter is missing or a data structure is malformed. A 403, also known as a forbidden status, indicates that the end user is not authorized to access the data requested or lacks the appropriate permissions needed to perform a particular action. For example, attempting to order a cell phone plan that he or she is not authorized to order, or trying to retrieve a list of assets for a tenant that the user is not authorized to view. The 404 status, commonly referred to as a not found, occurs when the end user is requesting something that doesn't exist on the server. An example of this would be when the API consumer attempts to make a call to an endpoint that doesn't exist. And finally, a 500 error, also known as an internal server error. This error, though very rare, is one of the ones that is not covered by any of the 400 series errors above. It occurs when the server encounters an unexpected condition that prevents it from processing the request. Unlike the above errors, these errors are usually system-driven rather than the result of user error. Now let's see this in action by forcing an error to be returned via our developer portal. Okay, we're going to try making a request for a single device asset using an invalid asset ID. First, we'll go to the Device Assets endpoint, click on the Get tab, click on the Try It link to reveal our input form. Just going to select my scope. Okay, here's where our UI parameters are, looking for our device asset ID. I'm simply going to enter one that we know is a bad ID. Okay, enter my remaining query parameters. And we'll submit the request. Okay, we have our response. And as you can see, we have a 400 response. And if we look at the response body, here we will see the things we talked about. Our error code, which is, again, the code assigned by the backend system that cross-references back to their knowledge base. This can be very useful to the Tango support team when they're trying to find out more information about what particular error occurred. Also, the ID, again, this is a unique ID for this particular instance of this error that can be also used by the Tango support team to locate any information in the server logs that might be helpful in troubleshooting the issue. Next, we see the message, again, a plain language readable message that tells us what went wrong, along with the HTTP status code, which indicates why the request could not be fulfilled by the server. So there you have it. In the unusual event when they do occur, we can see that the API error response returns valuable information for getting you back on track quickly. Often errors are the result of a user error, such as a missing but required query parameter, or perhaps an invalid ID like we saw here, or a malformed request body. In these cases, the information requested in the error response often is enough for the API caller to resolve the issue and correct the request and resubmit it. But in cases where the solution is not so obvious, you may wish to contact the Tango support team. Provide them with the information contained in the error response, and they'll help you quickly pinpoint the cause of your issue and identify a resolution as soon as possible. I hope you found this video useful. For more information and tutorials on other topics, we recommend browsing the MobProc API video library at mobproc.tv and our documentation website at mobproc.info. That's all for now. Thanks for watching and have a great day.